Sorry, brothers and sisters. I apologize that my internet cut out, and I had to fix it. And now I'm back. We got to 1 Samuel chapter 6, where the two milk cows and the brand new cart that has never been used for anything else is approaching with the golden tumors and the golden mice that the Philistines put there, is approaching the border between the Philistine territory and the Israelite territory near the town of Bet Shemesh. The town of Bet Shemesh exists, it's been rebuilt, it's growing. The ancient site, is being excavated now in the last year and a half with a great big excavation, fabulous excavation with fabulous finds, wonderful things. So the ancient land of Israel is coming to life everywhere. All these ancient places you read in the Bible are now new cities. The old part is archaeologists are excavating and rediscovering it. So the cows are approaching there. It's harvest time between Passover and Pentecost. And the cows are lowing. They're moo, moo, moo. And the people who are harvesting in the field hear the sound and they see the cart. And they see the Ark of the Covenant. And they are ecstatically happy to see the cart coming up the field, the road, the ancient road from Gaza, from the Philistine territory, on the way back with the ark. I'm in verse 13. That's where I stopped earlier. Chapter 6, 1 Samuel, verse 13. Now the people of Bet Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and they lifted their eyes and they saw the ark and rejoiced to see it. Then the ark came into the field of Joshua of Bet Shemesh and stood there, and a large stone was there. So they split the wood of the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord and the chest that was with it, in which there were the articles of gold, and put them on a large stone. Then the men of Bet Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices the same day to the Lord. So when the 5 lords of the Philistine had seen it, they returned to Ekron the same day. What does it mean? That the Philistines followed the ark to make sure that it gets to the Israelite territory. And when they see that the ark came into the hands of the Israelites in Bet Shemesh, they went back to Ekron, to Philistine territory. Ekron is one of the Philistine cities that only recently was pinpointed, and we know exactly where it was. We knew where Gath was, where Ashkelon was, when Ashdod was. We knew where the 4 of the cities of the Philistines were, but we didn't know where Ekron was. There were a lot of theories that the archaeologists and the early travelers of the 19th century proposed, but only recently archaeologists have pinpointed Ekron exactly where it is. It's a little bit south toward Bet Shemesh. Toward Be'er Sheva. Okay, so there are the golden tumors in verse 17, which the Philistine returned as the trespass offering of the Lord. 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Gaza, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, and 1 for Ekron. 5 golden tumors. And the golden rats, according to the number of the cities of the Philistines belonging to the 5 lords, both fortified cities and country villages, even as far as the large stone of Abel, on which they set the ark of the Lord, which stone remains to this day in the field of Joshua of Bethshemesh. Okay, it remains to this day, to the day that this book is being written. Probably in the time of King David. Probably. But finished by the time of King David, yes. And then struck the men of Bethshemesh, because they had looked into the ark of the Lord. And he, the Lord, struck the men of Bethshemesh because they had looked into the ark of the Lord. He struck 50,070 men of the people, and the people lamented because the Lord had struck the people with great slaughter. And the men of Bethshemesh said, who is able to stand before this holy Lord God? And to whom shall it go up from us? So they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiryat Yearim. Kiryat Yearim is between Bethshemesh and Jerusalem, and it is today essentially the Arab village of Abu Ghosh. It's a friendly Arab village that has been friendly to the Jewish settlements and to the kibbutzim that were built there before 1948, in the late 1930s, and it's still a friendly village, rich village, because the Jews, on the Sabbath, when most things in Jerusalem are closed, the Jews go down to Abu Ghosh and shop there on the Sabbath and eat there in the Arab restaurants. We do too. We love to go there. We have a restaurant that I've been going there since I was 7 years old, and my dad took me the first time to Abu Ghosh, to that restaurant. So I've been faithful to the people of that restaurant, the owners of that restaurant. So they didn't know what to do with the ark. The ark not only struck the cities of the Philistines and the gods of the Philistines, but because the people of Bethshemesh didn't respect it, because they were not Levites, and even the Levites, only the high priest could look into the ark. So there was a big plague, and a lot of people, 50,070 men of the people, lamented because the Lord had struck the people with a great slaughter. And the men of Bethshemesh essentially said, let's get rid of the ark. So they sent messengers to the next city toward Jerusalem, which is Kiryat Yearim, saying, the Philistines have brought back the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up with you. Now, remember, the original place where the tabernacle that was built by Moses and the people of Israel in the wilderness 40 years earlier, was Shiloh, north of Jerusalem, north of Bethel. That place collapsed. Sons of Eli died. Sons of Eli died in the battle with the Philistines. We don't have any much information about what happened there and what was ensued after the loss of Shiloh and the ark. The ark will never return to Shiloh again. It goes to Nob. Where is Nob? Nob is Mount Scopus, where the Hebrew University of Mount Scopus is next to the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, between Jerusalem and Anatot, the place where Jeremiah lived. That's where it is. So, they don't know what to do with the ark. Then a man from Kiryat Yearim came and looked at the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill, and consecrated Elazar his son to keep the ark of the Lord. So it was that the ark remained in Kiryat Yearim a long time. It was there 20 years. And all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. And Samuel spoke to all the house of Israel, saying, if you return to the Lord with all your hearts, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtaroth from among you, and prepare your hearts for the Lord, and serve him only, and he will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines. So the children of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashtaroth, and served the Lord only. Chapter 7, verse 5. And Samuel said, gather all of Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray for the Lord, to the Lord for you. And they gathered together at Mizpah, drew water and poured it out before the Lord, a water pouring sacrifice. And they fasted that day and said there, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the children of Israel at Mizpah. End of verse 6 of chapter 7. What's going on? The center of worship, the tabernacle and the ark in Shiloh, gone. Gone. Samuel is running around the country teaching, preaching, judging the people. He's the last judge and the first prophet, classical prophet. By classical, I mean a prophet that was not working for the government, for the king, was independent, was recording the events around him and his prophecies and his meetings with the Lord and discussions, and judging the people at the same time. And after he leaves Shiloh, he's not interested in the ark so much. The ark doesn't play a role after Samuel leaves the tabernacle in Shiloh, and it falls in the hands of the Philistines. What Samuel is understanding and interested in is that you can worship the right deity, but serve other gods. Whoa! The people of Israel had syncretism. They were mixing pagan idols, Baal and Ashtaroth, together with God. And they were cross-identifying the God of Israel with the pagan gods. Now you say, well, we're Christian, we don't do this thing. No, you don't. Let me give you some examples. Google the names used by Christians for Mother Mary. For Mary, the mother of Yeshua. And you will notice, you will see that she's called the Queen of Heaven. You will see that she's called other names and worshipped in different ways that are absolutely pagan. And Yeshua is the same way. Jesus is the same way. You know, he has become essentially a Greek god, equivalent to the Prometheus, one of the sons of Zeus, the chief god of the Greek pantheon. Yeah, who suffered because he revealed the secret of life to humanity. I'm sorry, somebody's trying to call me and I'm not answering, so I hope that they cool down and understand that I'm busy, and I'll call them back later. This happens. So there was syncretism. Samuel takes advantage of their desire to have a regathering and restoring their relationship with the Lord. And he says to them, gather all the people of Israel at Mizpah. Mizpah becomes the center of the religious unity of the tribes of Israel. Not Shiloh anymore. Shiloh is dead, finished. Mizpah, south of Shiloh, north of Jerusalem, just south of where Ramallah, the city of Ramallah, is today, not a little bit south of Bethel. Mizpah. Today the Arabic name of it is Tel El Nasbe. Yeah, Tel El Nasbe. And that becomes Samuel's center of ministry. There is no tabernacle there. The ark is not there anymore. I want you to understand this very, very clearly. Samuel has understood what Paul spoke 1,000 years later, more than 1,000 years later, to the people of Athens. God doesn't dwell in houses made by men. He is God of heaven and earth, and everything in the world that we see and experience and touch and experience and smell and eat is from Him. It's from Him. And He doesn't need us. We need Him. He has existed from before time existed, before our, solar system existed. He created it. And we forget that. We miniaturize God in so many ways and make an idol out of Him. Even those of us who are faithful, who know the truth, who know Jesus, who've been saved by His blood and by His sacrifice, and recipients of His grace, even us sometimes minimize God, make a miniature out of Him. But the Father who created the heavens and the earth and loved the world so much that He gave His only begotten Son so that no one will perish, but everyone will have everlasting life, is much greater than we, even in our greatest imaginations, could imagine. And Samuel realized that we don't need the ark. The ark is a symbol. The ark is a thing. God doesn't dwell in things. Symbolically He did. Symbolically He does. But only symbolically. So, we have a situation here where Samuel is switching from the worship, the Levitical worship in the tabernacle, into a prophetic, faith-based, relationship-based relationship with the Almighty God. And until Solomon builds a new temple in Jerusalem, in the new capital of the people of Israel, the ark doesn't play a big role. In fact, David goes up to Nob, N-O-B, Nob, up Mount Scopus, just northeast of Jerusalem, where the Hebrew University is located today. The main campus of the Hebrew University is located there today. And he lies to the priest, and he takes the sword of Samuel, Goliath that was housed there in the tabernacle, and he eats the Lord's showbread from the table of the Lord that was baked on the Sabbath day, and he comes when the bread is just coming out of the oven, so to speak, and takes the bread to feed his hungry vagabond army. And God doesn't do anything to it. God doesn't mind it. God allows it. You know what a big thing that is? Christians need to learn that about their own worship. What do you think? You can buy God from your worship? Even if every one of you was Pavarotti and Placido Domingo and Giuseppe Carrera or Maria Callas or Caruso and singing and praising, and even if you would dance from morning till night like the prophets of Baal did on Mount Carmel with music and with bands, and you won't touch the hem of God's garment. Your heart will. Your sincerity will. But remember Paul's sermon in Acts 7, chapter 17, from verse 23 till verse 31. We've got to refocus ourselves. And Samuel is trying to refocus the people of Israel from the ceremonial worship of the tabernacle to a personal relationship with the Almighty God. That's what Samuel was trying to do. So he set up a new place without the ark and without the tabernacle in Mizpah, north of Jerusalem, south of Shiloh. And all Israel gathers at Mizpah, and they draw water, and they have a water feast, and they pour out the water. When does that happen of the year? Happens in Sukkot. The last day of Sukkot is the feast of water. That's why on the last day of Sukkot, Yeshua in John chapter 7 says to the people, on that same day, you will become fountains of living water. Water will come from inside of you. Not to water down I'm not interested to talk to them now, and they're nudniks. That's the Hebrew word, or the Yiddish word for nags that keep on calling and calling. They don't understand, they don't catch it, that I'm busy. Okay, no problem. I'm at home. By the way, all the pictures that you see in my recordings are I painted them. Not very often, because I'm not sick very often, but when I get sick with fever, I paint. I have time to paint. Nothing else I can do other than draw and paint when I'm sick. So Samuel is making this new center in Mizpah, and they have the feast of the water, and they celebrate the feast of the water. That means the first of tabernacles, Sukkot. And Samuel judged the children of Israel at Mizpah. It becomes his center of operation. Now when the Philistines heard that the children of Israel had gathered together at Mizpah, chapter 7, verse 7 of 1 Samuel, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, they were afraid of the Philistines. So the children of Israel said to Samuel, do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, and he may save us from the hand of the Philistines. Intercessory prayer. They're asking Samuel to intercede for the nation of Israel and to pray to God to save them from the battle of the Philistines. They already lost 34,000. 34,000 men in the battle that they lost the ark and Shiloh and the Philistines. So some years have passed, not too many years, and Samuel is there, and they beg him. And Samuel in verse 9 takes a suckling lamb and offers it at the whole burnt offering to the Lord. And Samuel cries out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. Now as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near the battle against Israel, but the Lord thundered with loud thunder upon the Philistines that day, and so confused them that they were overcome before Israel. And the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and drove them back as far below Beth-kar. There Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shen, and called it Ebenezer, saying, Thus said the Lord, thus far the Lord has helped us. Eben means rock, Ezer means help. So the stone of help was set up there, and the place was called Ebenezer. So the Philistines were subdued, and they did not come any more into the territory of Israel, and the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel, when the cities which the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel, from Ekron to Gath. And Israel recovered its territory from the hands of the Philistines. Also there was peace between Israel and the Amorites, the other neighbors, north and west, the Amorites. So here we have a situation that we need to take into account today. I'm going to stop here at verse 15 and continue in the next teaching from chapter 7 verse 15. Here is what the Philistines were a formidable force. They came from Crete, from Greece, and they had trained soldiers, and they had trained army, and they had the whole administration of the 5 kings. It's called an amphictyony. It was called a union, like the United Nations, of their 5 cities that were united. They worshiped the same God. They had the same architecture, the same clothes, the same culture, the same language. And the Israelites were a rabble compared to them. No king, no government, so to speak. Judges. Samuel is the last judge. Judges, people that were raised ad hoc to take care of a particular problem and had no public authority. A king has a public authority. Samuel was a judge. He was a volunteer. He did it by God's inspiration, like all the judges before him. But there was no administration. There was no kingship in Israel. And we're going to see soon in the next chapter what happens and how the kingship of Israel is established and what it means. But Samuel is growing old. He's a circuit rider between Ramah, Bethel, Gilgal, Mizpah, all these areas in the center of the country. We don't know what's happening in the Galilee. The tribe of Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali. We don't have any clue what's happening there. We don't have any clue what's happening in the tribes on the Transjordan, Reuben and Manasseh and Gad, half of Manasseh and Gad. We're going to see what's happening in this whole situation. But for now, in summary of this chapter 6 and half of chapter 7, Samuel, the last judge, is doing his work. He's serving the people. He's running around the country spreading the knowledge of God and the faith-based relationship with God. As a prophet, not as a priest, as a prophet. The priesthood went sour, corrupt, financially, sexually, administratively, spiritually, in every way it became corrupt. And God essentially took it off. Samuel was probably 23 years old when the revelation from God came to him that I'm going to take care of Eli and his sons and their corruption, and the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant all will be taken care of, because the people's heart is far away from. So God bless. And you should know that Lord willing, maybe tomorrow, the next day, I will be again in the afternoon, about the same time, continuing chapter 7 and entering into these fascinating chapters about establishing Israel as a kingdom. Kingdom with a king who is not in heaven, but he is flesh and blood. These nudniks don't stop, but I'm going to stop and end the teaching.